We interrupt this regularly scheduled pre-recorded broadcast to bring you breaking news that happened a day ago when you see this. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, just the nature of doing pre-recorded television on the internet brings this. We have a topic for today, but I want to get your take on something that is literally, as we record this, breaking. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff held or are holding right now, as I say this, a news conference to announce that if the Trump administration should choose to try to obstruct the 6 congressional panels that are conducting an impeachment inquiry, that instead of going through the normal delay process that a president can use to drag Congress out for months at a time, that Pelosi and Schiff said that they will treat the Trump administration's obstruction as an additional article of impeachment. Essentially, if you don't comply with our subpoenas for documents or testimony, we will add that to the pile about which you are being impeached, Mr. President. Bill, what do you think of this tactic on the part of the Democrats? Will it accomplish their goal of treating this with some alacrity and getting it done in time for the 2020 election cycle?
Well, to be honest with you, Scott, this is the first thing I've heard in this whole goat rodeo that actually worries me a little bit is obstruction charges, because I still don't think there's anything there. From everything I've seen, there's nothing impeachable there. But new charges based on obstruction. In other words, if the president tries to obstruct an investigation into nothing, the nothing investigation produces nothing, but there could be actual obstruction there. So this is a lever.
There are a lot of people sitting behind bars who were not convicted on the underlying charge, but rather by lying to prosecutors or by obstructing justice in the investigation of it.
Precisely right. Now, the bigger question is, what is the purpose of this? Because if she says she's talking about an ongoing investigation, I still, from a raw political point of view, unless they've got actual impeachable he's not going to be impeached. Can we just get this said? Can we just say this, please? He's not going to be removed from office. He's not.
Let's make that distinction because some people are tuning in for the first time, Bill.
I'm so sorry. Let's just be clear.
Go for
it. Removing a president from office is a 2-step process, and the founders in their wisdom understood this. They understood that it was a requirement. In order to do something this monumental, you had to have both parts of Congress working. You had to have the House, which was very flash volatile, every 2 years, completely cycled, or at least theoretically anyway. So they would be the ones that would bring the charges kind of on the news cycle, so to speak. And then presumably in the Senate, there would be cooler, wiser heads that would deliberate and make the actual vote to remove the president. So many people think that impeachment means removing the president, but it doesn't. Impeachment means essentially going to the Senate to say, here's the case against the president, then the Senate votes, and the Senate decides whether or not to remove the president. So in effect, the
House of Representatives serves as a grand jury that hears the case, so to speak, from the prosecutor and then files an indictment, which then goes to court.
Precisely. And since the actual jury now it consists of a plus 4 or 5 Republicans, none of whom I see going to jump ship unless something genuinely, absolutely enormous explodes out of this, then my initial kind of churning kind of sense of, will they never let this go? It's like, well, it doesn't matter. They will never let it go. And unless they're, again, and I don't think, I'm not going to keep saying this every sentence, unless there is some monumental new discovery in all of this, I think the president can obstruct all he wants to.
So you're saying that Schiff and Pelosi may have found an opportunity to create such a monumental discovery by, in effect, saying to the Trump administration, unless you bring us all the information and the people that we want, we will count that as an article of impeachment that's not as hazy as this Ukraine campaign finance law violation, but rather an obstruction of Congress.
Right. Now, this is something, like I said, it's the first time I've heard anything on this issue that caused me some genuine concern. But again, that cause of genuine concern lasted a whole 20 seconds for me until I realized that it doesn't matter whether or not they add obstruction charges to this to this charade. They're going to do it whether they add obstruction or not. And even if obstruction occurs and that is in fact an impeachable offense, it would have to be monumental in order for that to be something that the Senate would agree on and remove Donald Trump from office.
So, Bill, the risk here, of course, as you, I think, are hinting at right now, is that Republicans in the Senate may say, look, this isn't just an offense against campaign finance law. This is an offense against the institution of Congress itself. By flouting the House of Representatives and refusing to answer a subpoena in a timely manner or at all, the Trump administration has effectively said to a co-equal branch of government, you have no authority where the Constitution says you do.
That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is for the Senate Republicans to say, talk about abuse of power, is for the Senate Republicans to say that the House is absolutely out of bounds on the initial charges. It's like saying, I accuse you of murdering your family. I didn't murder my family. Well, we got a subpoena to get into your house, and we found out that you have you've got a cleanliness violation in your restaurant, so we're going to put you in jail for that. The Republican-held Senate should and could say to the House, this is a second attempt to make something out of nothing. And furthermore, it is an absolute abrogation of the entire idea of removing a president from office. We talked about this on a right angle we shot just yesterday, Scotty. And I have to say, I came up with something that I actually kind of liked quite a lot. And that's this. The process of removing the president, the impeachment process, is not something that happens because you lost an election. It's not Plan B. It's not an appeal. That's what the Democrats have been treating this as from the day this guy was elected, from the night that they knew he'd won the presidency. They had been looking at impeachment as a way to appeal the vote, and that's exactly what this is. They're going to appeal the vote. They lost in the courthouse, and now they're going to go and try it again on appeal. And that's not what impeachment and removal of the president is. On the contrary, it is a very serious, extremely solemn, and catastrophic event that, as you pointed out when we did the right angle episode on this, has to gather significant numbers of both parties. And it certainly doesn't seem to be breaking that way. So my advice to Donald Trump, because I know he listens to me on a daily basis, is to basically give him everything. But, because he's already released the transcripts, I thought the transcripts made the Democrats look like idiots. But when I say give him everything, I mean give him everything within an extremely narrow limit of stuff that pertains directly to that conversation. They are going to come after Donald Trump for his tax returns. They're going to come after him for all kinds of things. And I think what Donald Trump needs to do, if he's smart, and he is smart, and he's certainly got a good attorney, then what he will do is he will make available everything that is directly relatable to the Ukraine thing and make a clear definition between that and anything else that the Democrats are going to go fishing for, because they're going to go fishing for everything. And as long as they make a clear case to the American public, but essentially when you get to brass tacks, as long as Donald Trump can make a clear case to Senate Republicans that I have given them everything that was pertinent to the Ukraine discussion, and I don't think that there's any crimes committed or anything there, as long as Donald Trump does that, I think the Republicans will hold in the Senate. If he completely buttons up, then the Democrats are starting to appear to have a case of just basically contempt on the part of the president. And while that's a serious charge, I know of 150 million other people who are guilty of contempt of Congress at this point.
So, Bill, the Democrats seem to, or at least the majority of Democrats seem to have been making the case internally that speed and focus are their friends. Let's get this impeachment inquiry underway as quickly as possible. Let's get articles of impeachment introduced into the House as quickly as possible. And let's keep that focused to the Ukraine issue. It sounds to me like you're saying that speed and focus are also the White House's friend.
I actually don't think it's the White House's friend. I think it's in the interest of the White House to, if they're going to go through with this, the big denouement, the big reveal, assuming our side is where we need to be, and I don't see any reason why we aren't, should be as close to the election as possible so that people stay ginned up. I heard somebody at lunch the other day, at lunch with a group of Republicans, and a guy I admire an awful lot said that if the Kavanaugh assassination had happened a month later, not earlier, a month later, then Republicans would have held the House because Republicans were so furious about it at the time. But over the course of a month, people just forget. They cool down.
And for those viewers who may not be paying attention to the news the way Bill does, let me just say that Bill's use of the A word there is in a metaphorical sense. Kavanaugh is alive and well and serving on the U.S. Supreme Court. So we don't
moral assassination.
Character.
If you're a man of integrity and a man of character, if your character has been successfully besmirched to the idea that half of the country thinks that you're an unrepentant, unpunished rapist, that's pretty damn near to assassinating the essence of who Brett Kavanaugh is. So I'm going to stick to my original definition.
So Bill, speaking of the original, my original topic for this show, in fact, was this idea that has been floated by a lot of people on Trump's side of the argument that basically says, even if the House of Representatives files articles of impeachment, and even if the Senate, unlikely event that it is, happened to convict him, having picked up 20 additional Republican votes in order to get that supermajority to do so, President Trump could actually be removed from office and stand for re-election. And there's an interesting piece from our old buddies at theconversation.com. We did a show about them within the last week or so where they decided to ban certain kinds of speech. But in this case, Austin Surratt at theconversation.com writes this story that basically says, if you look at the history of impeachments, especially because there have been more of them in this area in the judiciary, it is possible for a president to be impeached, removed from office, and run for office again because the Constitution requires actually a second vote, in effect, on the sentencing from the Senate, mandating removal from office, but not mandating disqualification from future offices. And let me give you one example, Bill. In 1989, a federal district judge was impeached for perjury and conspiring to solicit a bribe. He was removed from office. And since 1993, Alcee Hastings has been a representative from the state of Florida to the U.S. Congress. Bill, what do you think of the idea that no matter how much success the Democrats experience in this impeachment process, President Trump could literally just run for re-election and get elected again anyway?
My first reaction to this, honestly, is to once again just kind of sit back with just slack-jawed awe at the seemingly infallible wisdom of the people that designed this country. We are so indebted to these people, and we have let them down so badly. I really am very, very, very much dreading having to face George Washington in heaven, where both of us will be with you as well, Scott, looking down on the deeds of Nancy Pelosi in the nether regions. But to continue, that is not only a reassuring thought on some level, it is almost the most reassuring thought, because I believe, Donald Trump's existing supporters believe, and I think most Americans who've been watching this believe, that this is a witch hunt, which is a term that's been used way too frequently. It's lost all its meaning now. It's a coup. A coup is a much better term. It's a coup. It's an attempt to use impeachment and removal from office as an appeal, as a revote. And since the election of Donald Trump, the entire progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been doing nothing but kicking up enough dust to get this impeachment process happening. And when there's not anything under the dust, they say, well, look at the presence of all the dust. There's got to be something with all that dust. In fact, we're going to impeach Donald Trump for raising a dust storm. And this is how it's working. And I know for me, and I'm sure for enormous numbers of Republicans and conservatives and some Democrats that I know, that if they were to do this, if they were to remove Donald Trump over this, the American people would see it for what it is. Most of us would anyway. It is a coup by elitist career politicians. The entire thing about the swamp is all real, and that this is a coup designed to remove a president who was sent there in order to prevent this kind of elitism ruling over the American people. And I personally think that if that happened, if Donald Trump was actually removed from office, I think if he ran on re-election, I think it would be thundering. I think every single American that has ever put an American flag on anything would come out and bring everybody they had with them. I think it would just be overwhelming. Now, so it's another good thing, yet another fail-safe in in the vision of the founders, when in fact, if this person had done what Richard Nixon had done, which is not terribly enormous in this grand scheme of things, but definitely lied to Congress and should have been removed. If it's clear to both Republicans and Democrats in the Congress and in the American people that this guy's committed a crime, then the mechanism for removing him actually works. We watched it happen in front of our eyes with Richard Nixon.
Now, a lot of this has to do with timing, of course, for that kind of a scenario to play out. And most Americans are familiar with the fact that, at least by now, that there have been 3 presidential impeachments in our history: President Andrew Johnson, President Bill Clinton, and President Richard Nixon. Johnson and Clinton were both acquitted in the Senate. Nixon resigned before what his own party believed, his Republican representatives in Congress believed would be his conviction. And so he got out of office and got out of town, perhaps wisely so. But it's interesting, if you look at the history, according to Austin Surratt, who did some research into this for theconversation.com, of 17 impeachment proceedings against judges and other non-presidential officials, 14 of the 17 went to trial. 8 of those people were found guilty, and the Senate disqualified just 3 from future office. Now, one of those was a guy whose investigation was led by Adam Schiff, who's now the House Intelligence Committee chairman. So Schiff was smart enough, at least at that point, to put in that qualifier that he would be disqualified from office. And apparently Alexander Hamilton thought in general that that would be a good idea as well, if you look back at the debates in 1787. Bill, in general, do you think if a president gets impeached, it's a good idea to say he can't run for office again?
No, clearly not. Clearly not.
Not just this president, but any president.
No, clearly not. Doesn't matter who it is. Because if you say that, you are taking the choice away from the American people, where the choice belongs in the first place, where the choice was already made in the first place. If you're saying that you can railroad a guy, impeach him, and make sure that he never has a chance to run again because of crimes that you've invented, then you've taken away the final safety, the final fuse in the entire system, which is the American people can basically say to the Congress, go to hell. You know, we know what's going on. We're going to reelect him. It's the will of the people once again is being protected by this magnificent, unbelievable system that has yet to fail us. Every single problem we have in this country and every single problem we've ever had and every single problem we ever will have is a result of us not being able to follow the Constitution as it is written, period. That's all there is to it. So, of course, I'm against the idea of having him banned for life. But you do raise an interesting point, Scott. And what that point is that a United States president has never been removed from office forcibly.
And it is true. We shall see
and
what
happens. I don't see Donald Trump resigning on this one. I don't. I think they're going to have to.
As I saw on MSNBC the other day, he's going to hole himself up in the White House and refuse to leave if they remove him from office.
Well, he's a billionaire, Scotty, you know, and that buys a lot of rubber doorstops and folding chairs that you can prop up against the various doors of the White House, and maybe a couple of 2x4s and a trip to Home Depot, nail up the windows. He should be able to stay in there for several months, if not years, I would imagine, ruling from his golden throne, no doubt.
You get the sense that sometime over the past several years, all the extremists on the extreme right have sold all their black helicopters to the extremists on the extreme left. I just would like to get into the black helicopter business, frankly. As a business model, I'm sure it would provide retirement benefits to me well beyond my wildest dreams. It's like $60 a minute to buy an ad on MSNBC for those, by the way. So if you do get into that business, I recommend it. For the folks who are supporting this program, we are grateful. They are the members at BillWhittle.com. If you'd like to become one of them, you can go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.